Hello and welcome to Six Figure Authors, the show that helps you take your writing career to the next level. And obviously this intro is not pre-recorded. I am Lindsay Baroker and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Joe Lalo.
And I'm Andrea Pearson.
We're recording at night instead of during the day, so any awkwardness, let's chalk it up to that. But I think we're going to have some good information for you guys today. We're going to be kind of doing a deep dive on pre-orders and discuss when they make sense and when they don't, how long they should be, and why that is platform dependent, and some of the pitfalls you'll want to consider. You'll see that there's no kind of one size fits all with this, and it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And in addition to giving our thoughts on them, we're going to do an overview at the beginning. We had a ton of great pre-order questions from the Facebook group, so we'll be going over those in the second half of the discussion. And actually, we had so many questions, we may end up doing a part two. We'll just see how it goes. But if we weren't able to get to your question, hopefully we will still answer it, basically the gist of it. Before we jump into our pre-order deep dive, would you guys like to share any news that you might have?
Sure. First off, so I don't know if Amazon changed their error notification stuff on typos that they might find in your books, but I noticed that I wasn't the only one. A number of people have been going through to correct typos, and it turns out I had over 500, which is odd because the last time I checked that system, it was like 9. So most of them were not errors. Well, a lot of them were not errors. A lot of them were people who were either disagreeing with word choice or getting things wrong that I got right. The most glaring one was it's ITS versus IT apostrophe S. I had one reader who had them backwards and corrected all of the times that I had them correct. So whatever, went through, fixed. It's fine. It's a very fast process. But that was fun. That was a sort of a two-day divergence from my expected behaviors. I've also been writing some short stories and refilling the pipeline for Patreon, and I'm going to try out some stuff. I've had a lot of back burner projects that haven't, like, I don't know when I'm going to release them, and some of them are polished up. Like I've got at least 2 full-length novels that are polished up but don't have any place in my launch window. So I'm going to probably do some preview stuff in my Patreon. There's only a couple, dozen people in there, a couple dozen people in there. So it's not as though it's going to eat into my launch if I ever release these things. And I've also been buttoning up Free Wrench 6, which still doesn't have a title, but it's going to go to the editor in a couple of weeks. And I am starting on Big Sigma 6. So with any luck, I will succeed at that whole year of 6 thing that I've been working on. That's my news.
You will succeed.
You will succeed. I must.
As for me, Nolan, mi esposo and co-writer. I don't know why I can't just say my husband. It just feels weird sometimes. He's passed off Sable Heart to me, which is the 5th book in my Midnight Chronicles. And after 3 weeks, which to me feels like a really long break from writing and revising, I've started digging in again. It feels really good. This week's been really interesting. I've had a couple health issues that I've lamented to Joe and Lindsay about crop up. And so the doctor's been doing a whole bunch of tests. And one of the things he made me do was take this thing that just totally knocked me out for like 2 days almost straight. And I was just like falling asleep on the couch instead of editing. And that didn't feel very good, but that's finally leaving my system now. And so I'm going to be getting back into revising again after just starting revising. I just want to write, people. I just want to be an author. So yeah, the baby also has gone from 2 naps a day to 1, which is glorious because that gives me larger chunks of time where I don't have to be, like getting him ready for something. So getting him ready for food or a nap or something like that. And then he also sleeps longer. So that's nice. I really appreciate that. And let's see what else is there. We still haven't decided if we want to make this series 7 books or 6. I'll find out as I'm editing and revising this current book. But also for those of you who are interested, my course discount is still live. You go to selfpublishedstrongcourses.com and enter the word colon to get 50% off. And I can't even say that without smiling, dang it. Listen to the interview with me, which was like, 3 weeks ago, to find out why I'm talking about colons. It's not grammar.
I was just going to try to bail you out and say, like a semicolon, it's colon. That's why.
I have no shame, Lindsay. Anyway, I did have somebody ask on Facebook if I plan to when a course gets outdated, if I plan to go back and fix them and update them and things like that. And I've actually talked to, I mean, Lindsay and I have talked, and Joe, we were talking about that, what was like 4 months ago, 3 months ago or something, like maybe it was less time than that. This whole quarantine thing is just totally skewing time. But it's just, and so my decisions there were, do I want to put out a course and then redo it, like revise it and update it and everything for people who've already taken the course? Or do I want to leave it and not revisit it? Or do I want to revisit and publish as a new course? And I've decided that I'm going to revisit and publish as new courses, because my courses are so cheap and most people buy them at 50% off anyway. And so a $25 course, I'm making $20 off of that. And it costs a lot more than $20 to get them updated and things like that. It takes a lot of time out of writing. I still love doing them though. And so I'll continue doing them, but I've decided that when I need to revisit a topic, I will mark the previous course as the first edition, and then I'll put in there that there's a new edition available. And for those who are interested, they can go and download the new one. And I'll continue doing course discounts and things like that. So keep listening to the podcast and you'll hear about those. But because the course is not one of those really, really big ones, it's not financially possible for me to fix current courses. If I were charging, say, $600 or $700, $800 for a course that was like 80 hours long, then it would definitely be worth it to do it, because that's a big ticket item. But I mean, for a $12 course, a $5 course, I do have a $5 course. This is more of a service for me to everybody. And so I think that I will just make sure that my courses are money going in equals money going out for me. So I think that's everything. Lindsay, you can have your turn now.
I was just sitting here thinking, if we're going to record in the evenings, I'm going to have to get some better lighting for my office. I'm kind of hunkered in the shadows here. All right, but hopefully nobody's actually watching the video, right, guys? Nobody?
Go watch the video, everyone. Go watch the video.
No. All right, for my own news, I just thought I'd share that I've been listening to Brandon Sanderson's Writing Science Fiction and Fantasy 2020 lectures on YouTube. He's basically got his whole course that he teaches at BYU, I think he's in Utah too, up there. So if you're at all interested in sci-fi and fantasy, or even just, he talks about, he's going through plotting and characters and outlining. So even if you're not, obviously he is a pretty successful author for those of you not in the genre who might not know him, but and it's a good course so far. It's fairly basic, but it's very interesting hearing someone else's, like, this is how I do it. Something I always get asked is like, how do you do outlines? Do you want to show me your outline? And I horrifically, crawl in the corner and say, absolutely not. You don't want to see this mess, but he tells you what he does. So an actual professor, I don't know what he is. Is he a professor or like just a guy that comes in and teaches that course?
I think he might be like an adjunct professor. I don't think he's not a full-time professor. And so whatever he is, I mean, when I was at BYU, he only had like one course available. And of course it was full, and only people who had like 200 credits could ever get in.
All right. Well, it did seem popular, even though he has now shifted to doing it, I think, from home with his parrot. I don't know. Maybe that was another video I saw where he had the parrot, but definitely check it out if you're looking for he's mostly traditionally published, but he's very open to the fact that there's two valid paths right now. So he talks to both. I actually came in at the end where he's talking about, this is what you do when you're ready to publish. So I'll put the link to that in the show notes, or you could just look it up on YouTube. All right, let's jump into the pre-order topic. Just as a bit of an overview, in case anybody has not tried these yet, because in the olden days, we didn't have this option at all, and it's kind of gradually opened up more. And so we now pretty much have the same options as traditionally published authors or traditional publishers in our dashboard. We can set up a pre-order for up to 12 months in advance in most of the major stores and through the distributors also. Amazon for a while only did a 3-month one, but they've now opened it up to 12 months. And you can also, it can be an assetless pre-order, which means you don't need the cover, you don't need the file, all you need is the blurb and all the metadata stuff that goes with it. So I do recommend having covers. I have done them without, and if it's like book 4 in a series that people are committed to, they'll order it anyway, but you're gonna have a lot better luck if you have the cover. And basically, you're still going to want to make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to get all the files. And I would recommend doing it a week before the launch. I think Amazon right now gives you 4 days, and I don't remember what it is on the other stores. I usually upload it with plenty of time because I don't want to you know, because things do go wrong. Occasionally you hear horror stories of, well, it didn't, all my pre-orders were canceled and the book's not even live on Amazon on the launch date because something went wrong. And I think that's pretty rare, but it can happen. So just get it in early if you're going to do it. All right, I'm going to go into kind of the pros and cons. Did you guys want leave any comments on the overviews? Anything I'm forgetting that might be useful for people?
No, I think we're going to get into it pretty well in the body of the episode.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to start out just kind of reading. I made a list here, and I made Andrea and Joe add to my list. I was like, question mark, you got any more? So benefits of pre-orders. I'll go ahead and say mine first, and then the other guys will talk about theirs. First thing is that it allows you to start racking up sales long before the launch. And this is if you're wide and you're going to try to hit like a USA Today or New York Times bestsellers list, long pre-order is a huge advantage because all those sales are going to count on the week of the that the book launches. And you can't hit any of these lists if you're exclusive with Amazon. You have to have at least 2 of the major bookstores reporting numbers. So if you shoot for like, and I think it has to be at least 500 sales on Barnes & Noble. So that can be sticky for people who are really Amazon centric. And then, you know, usually people get the bulk from Amazon unless you just, you know, every now and then there are authors that do great on Apple. But so if you want to hit one of those lists and, you know, I don't know what you need these days for New York Times bestsellers. It's like 12, 15,000 maybe in a week. It's what I've heard. USA Today, if you can get over, sometimes, you know, it changes week to week, obviously, because you're competing against everybody else, but like 6, 7, 8,000, you might get that into the top 150 is what they list on the USA Today site. So something to think about there if that's a goal of yours. Another benefit is you potentially have a big payday on release day if you're able to rack up a lot of pre-orders. I had one going for 2 months for my 7th Star Kingdom book that came out in April. And, you know, I also had a Death Before Dragons book coming out that barely had any pre-orders because I basically just put it up 4 days early so I would have the links and be able to promote it on time. And it's like, ooh, boy, that's a really big difference in income there in one day if you do a pre-order and you get a sizable amount of orders. So you can also lock in buyers while they're still excited about the last book. This can be especially good if you've written book 1 and you've launched it and it's selling pretty well, but you don't have book 2 ready. One book is often not enough for readers to really remember you as an author and to remember to check back later. And not everybody's going to sign up for your list. That's just how it goes. Not everybody's a newsletter person. So if you can have the link to the pre-order of the next book in the back of the first book, that's a chance to get that order while readers are still excited about that, even though you may have not finished it yet. And another benefit, if you're wide, in some of the stores, the pre-orders actually do count towards your kind of release day ranking and give it a boost in visibility. I think Joe will probably talk about it. He's bigger in the Apple store than I am, so I don't even pay attention. I mean, I actually make pretty decent money there, but I don't tend to go looking for my books on launch day to see how they're doing. And we'll talk about this in the questions too. Amazon, I do not believe you currently get a boost in visibility. I believe they, and this is as somebody who launches almost every month, and I occasionally put in a new installment in an old series that's wide, so nothing's skewed by my Kindle Unlimited reads. I don't think currently that you get a boost from pre-orders on launch day on Amazon. The sales ranking, you get the big boost as the orders come in. I've certainly seen whenever they send out the new release alert, if it's a pre-order, you know, I got like 900 pre-orders on my first Death Before Dragons book when I was not ready to start building towards the launch. And I got that big spike up to like 100 in the store off of that. And I was like, shoot, man, I wish I could have gotten that during launch week. But so I believe right now, based on my experience, that you do not get a boost during, they don't all accumulate and help you on release day on Amazon. All right, next benefit is that it ensures the book goes live on the day you want in all the stores if you're wide, or you know, it ensures on Amazon too that it goes live on the day you want. Because every now and then, you know, I've published a lot of books, and I would say this has only happened maybe twice where it kind of gets hung for some reason, and you know, almost all the time within a couple hours you see the AISN and pretty soon the link is there. But every now and then, you know, 24 hours pass and it's still in publishing. And I've heard people to get question on copyright and have to prove the copyright or something every now and then. Like if you had already published it on another website, like on Wattpad or something, and then took it down, that might be more frequently the case. But you don't want the book not to go live on the day that you've got like news sponsorships on e-reader news today or BookBub new release alerts going out. So by at least doing a short pre-order, you ensure that, I mean, 99%, right, that it's not going to happen. All right, the last benefit I'm going to list before handing it over to the guys so I can breathe and drink is that
the guys,
you are so a guy and I am so a guy. Guys in America is neutral. Guys.
Sound like a callback to the old show, to the guys. Sorry, Lindsay.
You could be dudes. I don't know. I'm on the West Coast, so we say dudes too.
Dudes.
All right, and you can also, if you do a pre-order and you're tinkering with like Amazon ads, especially, or the other ones too, but most likely you're going to mess with Amazon ads right now a little bit. And it allows you to make a few ads, you know, try different ad copy and see what converts. You know, and then when the release day comes, you can see like, oh, those are the two that really outperformed the other ones, got the most sales. So that, you know, and then you can shut off the other ones, and maybe you've got 2 good ads that are already proven and ready to go right there on launch day. I will note that my experience with this, because I was trying, since I was doing urban fantasy for the first time, I wanted to hopefully get in the right Allsavots. You guys have heard about my launch, and I was just starting with that the Amazon alert 2 weeks early. It didn't really go to plan, but it did allow me to start tinkering. I did note that with pre-orders, the ads didn't convert as well. And I think that's going to be true most of the time. I think you'll find that some people will pre-order, especially your fans. So I was probably, honestly, it was my fans seeing that the books were there and ordering them. But you can still get some conversion. So that will allow you to see which ones do the best and tinker before it matters. Like maybe you're only spending a couple dollars a day at this stage, and then you're planning to ramp it up to like $50 a day during the launch week or whatever is in your budget. So then you know this is the ad that works. All right, passing it off to the guy, Joe, for the next couple.
All right, I have a few, but we mentioned actually in the previous episode, if you're looking to do a book through ACX and you want an audiobook through ACX and you want it to come out at the same time as the ebook and print release, you need it to be in Amazon's system, and you can do that with a pre-order. So, and because the pre-orders are now, you know, basically arbitrarily long, you can actually have a pre-order up long enough for an audiobook to be produced. When it was a shorter pre-order, it was almost impossible to pull this off correctly. And the other thing is, even though a lot of them aren't super effective, pre-orders do make you eligible for certain promotional opportunities. Specifically, BookBub has got a pre-order announcement email. It's one of the only things, like, it's not a featured email, so there's no editorial process. You could just pay and it goes out to your people. We'll talk about it later. But so if you're looking to expand your promotional toolkit to everything that's possibly available to you, pre-orders are necessary because there are pre-order specific promos.
Yeah. And did you say we were going to discuss BookBub's pre-order thingy in the future? Is that what you said, Joe?
Well,
There's a
I have got
question
notes
below.
on it somewhere down there.
Okay.
We'll see how far we get.
Okay, because I was like, we could discuss that. That would lead to a whole half-hour discussion. That one right there. Okay, so pre-orders also, and these are mine. If you can't tell by the fact that I'm talking now. No, Lindsay actually typed up all of the answers for us and said, here you go, Joe. Here you go, Andrea. Just kidding. Okay, so pre-orders give you a link to share with readers or to place at the end of a previous book. So you're capturing traffic. You know, when somebody finishes one book, they can go and pre-order the next book, even if it's not available. Yes. Okay, they help keep you accountable if deadlines are the best way for you to be productive, and that works really, really well for me. I usually will set up a pre-order after I finish writing the book right before it, and then we'll get into that in a little bit, our own schedule and the way we use pre-orders ourselves. Let's see. They help you keep things organized, and they allow you to do some tedious work up front. I hate putting in descriptions, and I hate the actual technical part of publishing. Like, categories and keywords and subtitles and series and number. It's so tedious. And I also hate uploading the cover. The whole process is just really tedious. And so pre-orders allow you to split that up a bit, so you can get some of the tedious stuff out of the way, so that if you're like on a time crunch, it's already done. You don't even need to think about it. You just go finish uploading. And I really like that. And then along that line, I've got some author friends who will set up a whole year of pre-orders at the start of the year, and then they go by that for the rest of the year. So it gives them a solid deadline to work towards. That works really, really well if you have a very, very predictable schedule. It doesn't work super well when you have babies and little kids, as I've discovered this past year. Also, pre-orders give you a longer period of time to make money on a book before it becomes part of your backlog. And that's something that a lot of authors tend to do. They focus on the newest book most, and they generally neglect their backlist. They don't know exactly how to promote their backlist. And so if you have a pre-order, it makes that book be more relevant to you for a longer period of time. Now, whether that's going to be a con in the end for you, I don't know. But it gives you something to focus on for longer, which is definitely good. And then it allows you to build hype easier. So it's a lot easier to get people excited when they can actually see that the book is on retailers currently. And that's not absolutely necessary if you're releasing frequently and writing frequently, but for people who, like me, who can only put out 3 or 4 books a year or even less, having a pre-order up gives you something to build topics and discussions around.
That made me realize I have one more, is if you are working on another series and your fans are going, when are you going to write book 8 in your Star Kingdom series, just hypothetical, your Star Kingdom series. If you put the pre-order up, you can say like, hey, it lets them know it's coming in September. I need to do that. I've been hesitant because I haven't even started writing that yet. I will be starting soon. But I've been a little nervous about doing pre-orders when I'm not at least partway done with the book yet. And I know everything's going along okay, especially with those later series books. It can go a little longer. But we should mention too that Amazon used to be pretty draconian if you missed the pre-order date, and they take away your privileges for a year, but they have lightened up. They sent an email, I don't know, a couple months ago when all the COVID stuff started, and it sounds like I haven't tested this myself. If I put a pre-order up, I'm going to make that pre-order unless something really major happens. But it sounds like they're being more accommodating right now if things go wrong, and so you can basically email them if you need to move it out. But best thing to do is just if you put a pre-order up, to make the date. All right, so let's talk about some of the disadvantages, because and we'll talk about how we use them, like Andrea said, and there are I do different things depending on the store, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish, whether it's a book 1 or a later book in a series. But before we go into that, some disadvantages are that, I said this when I talked about ads, that sometimes some people are going to be less likely to buy a pre-order because it's not instant gratification. They're like, oh, I can't get that for 3 months, I'm not interested. And your advertising dollars may be less effective because of that. I've actually, when I was getting ready to launch my first urban fantasy, I went and looked, try to find some authors that looked like they were kind of doing similar stuff. And I found one author that I just noticed that she had like 6 pre-orders up going, for the rest of the year. And I was like, all right, I'll target her. And she was like I was like poaching her readers, basically. It was my best converting keyword was her name, because I think people were landing on these pre-orders and going, well, can't order this. Oh, we'll see what's down here in the ad carousel. Okay, I'm going to get that one. So just something to consider. I personally wouldn't recommend doing a whole lot of advertising spend on pre-orders. Tinkering with it so that you have it nailed down when you release it is one thing, but I don't believe they didn't, in my experience. I watched it, they didn't convert as well. The same ads converted better after the book was live. All right, next, on Amazon specifically, having the sales trickle in over months can dilute your launch juice, because there's fewer sales left to get during that kind of release time where you're trying to get a whole bunch of sales spread over the first couple weeks, in the hopes that you'll kind of tickle the Amazon algorithms, as they say, and that it might pick things up and help you sell things. So we've talked about before how you want to not have it big burst all at once, but also having it on sale for 3 months ahead of time may kind of weaken your launch just a little bit, especially if you're doing a later book in the series, and that's not going to tickle any algorithms anyway. It's probably going to shoot up, all your fans are going to buy it, and then it's going to start dropping down. So you have to consider that. And this one is one I haven't observed myself. I don't spend a lot of time peeking in the popularity list. You kind of have to go digging for them on Amazon. But David Gaughran, who started doing some YouTube videos, you should check him out if you haven't already. In a past talk he did on the popularity list, which is what fuels the recommendation engine, basically. He mentioned that pre-orders don't seem to be counted, or at least not weighted as equally to sales of active books. So you may not be getting as much visibility boost from pre-order sales. And I will go ahead and link to the video in which he talked about that. It's a couple of years old, but he also referenced it in a really recent video he did, so may still be true. And I feel like that makes sense. Like Amazon is, because they know that books on sale are going to convert better than pre-orders. So they may want to more likely push books that are available and can be purchased right now and that are going to convert well to their readers. All right, so the next thing, and I saw this really with my series, is if the pre-order of the next book in the series is available, we talked about how this can be an advantage because you can link to it in the back of the book. But that's probably going to be the one action that the reader does when they finish the current book, as opposed to, you know, maybe you're also asking for reviews, maybe you're hoping they'll sign up to your newsletter. And I found that with the first 3 books in my series, I had them available, boom, 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 and I had the links, so they pre-ordered it. So people could like read book 2, go right on and pre-order book 3, and that's what they did. But I didn't have the cover art yet for 4, and that was the beginning of the COVID stuff, so I didn't put that one up on pre-order. I didn't, you know, I wasn't quite sure. I just said, all right, if you could just leave a review on this one, if you're enjoying the series, and sign up for my mailing list. And boy, I got like book 2 had 100 reviews at that point, and all of a sudden book 3 had 200 reviews. It was like, well, everybody left a review because they were excited and then they weren't sure when book 4 was coming. So you kind of have to think about what you want your call to action to be at the back of the book. What's the most important thing? Is it getting reviews, which it may be during, you know, those first couple of weeks that you have the book on sale? Is it getting people onto your mailing list so you can sell every single book to them as it comes out? Or is it just getting into the next book in the series? I'm not sure that's a disadvantage. It's just something to be aware of, that usually you're only going to be able to get people to do one thing there. All right, moving on to Joe.
All right, now this one, if like one of the disadvantages that I've found, and it doesn't affect me so much anymore, but it did early on. If you're pressed for time and you like, especially say you're not a full-time author yet, and this is filling up all of your spare time, a pre-order date is a deadline that has suddenly dropped on you. And it's not like, you know, an editor might give you a deadline or anything like that, but this is a thing that is externally enforced, that is public, and that could be a source of enormous stress. Like, I know that when I plan a trip, no matter how far out the trip, if it's 6 months in the future, the moment that I have like, oh, I got to go to that trip, it's just a thing that's in my brain taking up brain cycles. So if you're the kind of person who really stresses over deadlines, this is pretty much the hardest deadline that you can inflict upon yourself, and that might be a problem for you. And there's also, as Lindsay mentioned, in the past particularly, there have been penalties for failing to meet a pre-order deadline, and relatively severe ones if pre-orders are a part of your launch strategy. So it can be a source of stress, and if that's a problem for you, be mindful of it. Also, if you don't do asset list pre-orders, there was a time when asset list pre-orders weren't available everywhere. So people who hadn't finished the book yet would put an incomplete version of the book or an unedited version of the book up and then replace it closer to the launch date. And there were horror stories of the unfinished version of the book being the version that everyone got. And, you know, hopefully nowadays that's less of an issue, although, you know, as we were talking about earlier, we'll probably talk about later, there are still issues that float around with the way pre-orders are fulfilled. So that's another thing that you've got to be mindful of if you're doing a pre-order. Is just, it is another moving piece that can fail. So keep it in mind when you're making your pre-order decision. That's really it for me.
And I actually had that happen to me. Nook sent the wrong book out, but I'd heard of it happening to other people, and so I put at the top something that said, "This is the unedited, unfinished version. If you receive this instead of the final version, please contact the retailer where you purchased it." And I had a couple people message the retailer and me, and it got worked out. But I was like, thank goodness they did not read. Well, maybe they read it, but at least they knew it wasn't the final version. I mean, I would have read it just out of curiosity personally, but I really hope that they did not. Okay, so for me, okay, I don't, it's kind of like almost all of the pros for a pre-order can potentially be a con, just depending on your circumstances and your situation. Because like Joe was saying, having a deadline is pretty stressful sometimes, and other times it's really beneficial. Um, so price is a lot more sensitive with a pre-order. A lot of readers are trained, especially for a first book in a series, to pre-order something that's only at 99 cents or discounted. That's not as common. I mean, that's not always the case with later books and series, but almost always with a first book in a series, people are just, and the reason for that is because so many people are aiming for lists, and so they do pre-orders at 99 cents. And so readers they know that pre-orders are a lot, are regularly 99 cents. And then going along the lines of price, if you change the price of a pre-order at any point, what happens is you could, okay, so this is what's happened to me. I pre-ordered a book at 99 cents. The book got launched at $4.99. And so I was charged $4.99 even though I pre-ordered it at 99 cents. And they might have fixed that by now, but if you change the price of the pre-order on launch day is what people will get charged. And so you need to be very, very, very careful with that and be very conscientious. Don't change the price on a pre-order. Leave it the way it is the whole time, because that made me really cranky. I mean, I wanted the book anyway, but I was like, I felt like I don't know, I felt like screwed with, because, you put it up for 99 cents and then right the last minute, they charged $4.99 for it. So just be careful with that. Back to you, Lindsay.
Yeah, I would hope that's something that's been fixed since now, because that seems like it'd be totally rife for scammers to come along and be like, oh, 99 cents. And then, oh, it's $19.99 the day before the release.
Dang
And,
it, maybe I shouldn't say something. Maybe we could do that, Lindsay.
Well, I actually usually go the other way. And if I'm going to discount anything, sometimes I like to, I've just started doing this in the last year, reward people who go out and pre-order the book, or who are just following along and reading the books right as they come out. And so I've done one where it's like, usually it's $4.99 for my later books and series. And I was like, if you get it during the pre-order, it's $2.99. And that's still enough for me to get the 70% royalty and get a nice bonus on launch day. But I think it's nice to reward the people who really follow you and faithfully buy your books, because usually they can get kind of screwed, because we always are, after a year or two and the series isn't selling that well anymore, you're like, let me go see if I can get a book bub, and drop the price. Maybe it was $3.99 and suddenly it's 99 cents. So I'm trying to be conscious of that and make sure that every now and then they get some goodies too. All right, we are going to talk a little bit about how we use pre-orders in the past, and also what our strategies like now, and then we'll roll into the questions you guys gave us. I guess I'm starting off on this one. So I don't do many launches wide in all the stores at once, because for the last 3 years or so, I've mostly been doing launches into Kindle Unlimited. And then later I take them out and kind of do a second launch when I go wide. But I do have some series that have always been wide. So like last year, I did an 8th book in my Dragon Blood series, just kind of for fun, as I was also working on the spin-off series. I guess that was 2 years ago now. Actually, the time, guys, it's zipping along, except in quarantine, where it's been 3 years since March. But so what I do is I'm doing new release wide for a later book in the series. I'll just put it up as soon as I have the cover art. I think I put that one up about 3 months ahead of time, and just let the sales accumulate, let the readers know they can get it. I'm not usually thinking about, oh, I want to get like extra launch day juice on Apple or Barnes & Noble. Like I said, it's not that I don't make money there, but I don't even know how to. I have all the Apple things. I have the iPad, the iPhone, the Mac, and I cannot navigate their store. I'm just like, it's not just, I buy all my ebooks on Amazon. Sorry, Apple. I have all your hardware though. So I'm not worried too much about that, but it just, it's that much more time. Like Andrea said, you can start promoting it to your fans. If you were trying to get hit a list, I don't think I've ever managed to get more than like 5,000 or 6,000 pre-orders. Like I've never been quite enough. And now that I'm launching on Amazon, obviously that's not even an option. So my only time hitting lists have been with my box sets that BookBub has done, and they just happen to do quite well. Or I've been in some of the multi-author ones too, but I don't even think you can still hit New York Times in the multi-author ones. I think they've kind of taken that option away, which is probably fair. But that was a bit of a tangent. So that's how I do it though. As soon as I have it on those stores, I'll put it up there. And then on Amazon, it kind of depends. If it's like book 8 in a series, I'm probably going to put it up at the same time. But if I was launching a new series wide, maybe I'm making book 1 99 cents to get as many people in there as I can, or let's say I decide I got to be on that USA Today list with a new series, then I would put it out, on all those stores at once. I might still hold back a little bit and not do as long of a pre-order on Amazon. It would depend. If I was trying to hit a list, maybe I would. But these days, when I'm launching a new book 1 into Kindle Unlimited, I will do a short pre-order. I did a little over 2 weeks on my first Death Before Dragons book. That's the urban fantasy. And that was basically what Joe was talking about, so I could also upload the audiobook at ACX. And I was trying to have that go live at the same time. And it went live 3 months later. That was kind of my horror story with ACX this spring. And I know a lot of people had that same horror story. Fortunately, they're faster again, but boy, that really kind of borked that's a word, right? Borked my audiobook strategy for that whole series. So I'm going to have to regroup and probably do a box set and launch that later as a new release. But I diverge again. But if you do it a couple weeks early, you can then claim it on ACX, submit the audiobook, and now they're faster, so hopefully you can get everything live at the same time. 2 weeks also gives you enough time to book promos. Usually at a lot of the sponsorship sites. So some of them you got to be farther out. And what you can do if you don't want to do the longer pre-order, especially on a book 1 in a new series, you're worried about diluting the launch. What I've done successfully is put the book up on Goodreads and use that, put all the information up there and submit that link to, some of the sites like Robin Reed's Book Barbarian, you got to be 6-8 weeks out to get a slot. And I've successfully sent them that and said, and they're going to look and make sure you've launched other books and you're reliable. You might have had to buy promos with them before they'll consider that, but they've done that. They've accepted that. And then just when I got the Amazon link up, before the release a couple weeks, I sent it to them and they're like, okay, everything went off without a hitch. I will say, because once you put that pre-order up, Amazon may send out that new release alert to your followers. They've been it's hard to predict. Sometimes they're like right on the ball with that, like happened with me with Sinister Magic, where I didn't particularly want them to send it out. They were right on the ball and sent it out early, and then they disappeared in like March and April, and now right as we record this in May, they're sending them out again. But that can dilute things because all your people might go out and buy it 2 weeks before the launch if you do that. So I'm thinking I may go back down to maybe a 1-week pre-order on standalones or book 1s or anything where I'm kind of hoping for that stickiness, especially on Amazon, to attract possibly new readers. So I don't get a repeat of that situation, but it's tough. It seems like no matter what you plan to do during the launch, it won't go quite perfectly or according to plan. But you don't want to get something where you get like a big, spike and then a dip because you can't keep that momentum up to the actual launch. So that was a bit rambly and tangenty in there, but why don't you guys talk about what you're doing with pre-orders now?
Can I ask a quick question? Do you know if Smashwords, was it Smashwords that had a 10-day period where you had to have it up for 10 days for pre-order before it was like, so you couldn't do like a 3-day pre-order? Was it Smashwords that did that, and have they changed that now?
I do not know. Joe actually might be more likely to know. When I've done Smashwords, because I still use them, like if my Dragon Blood series went through them to start with, and I found that if you break series through different distributors, they might not all get grouped together at the final destination. But I always did it early, so I'm not sure what we'd have to check and see how fast. I say give it at least a week, but you could check when you're on there. That's another one. They were one of the first ones that allowed the assetless pre-orders, so you don't necessarily have to have the book in hand. Joe, do you know that at all? What the?
I'm not sure, but I'll have the answer for that the next time I'm not talking for a little while. But right
All
now,
right, Joe's
I'm
gonna
talking.
go Google. Go ahead,
Real-time
Andrea.
research, everyone. Um,
Okay.
as for me, my tactics with pre-orders are similar to Lindsay's wide tactics. In the past, I have done massive pre-orders, 4 to 6 months, back when 6 months was the maximum on Smashwords. I didn't release as often back then, so having 4 to 6 months of being able to talk about a thing, like there was a period early in my career when I didn't release a book for an entire year, but I was able to have about half of that time lined up for what would eventually be the next book release. So it really helped me sort of keep busy talking to my fans and stuff about things. These days, I've shortened that up quite a bit. Usually, my pre-orders only last about a month because I've only done one sort of standalone slash new release in the past year or so, 2 years or so. Um, I have diluting my day one sales wasn't really a concern because these were all, book 4, book 5, book 6 in a series. So I didn't worry too much about the long pre-order on Amazon being a problem. So I was just doing about a month of pre-order on all locations. Um, and yeah, like nowadays, I think I'm going to start moving to shorter pre-orders on Amazon and longer pre-orders elsewhere. I've also, because have been wide with everything, a lot of my pre-orders were longer on Smashwords to give me opportunities to do some promo stuff with other storefronts. Apple, and I'll talk about that later too, but Apple had a couple of different opportunities that they would give you if you were on pre-order for a long period of time and you sort of gave them a heads up about it. They could arrange some love in their storefront.
So when it comes to, for me with pre-orders, I've done like the, 2 week pre-orders. I've done, the longest I've done was like a 6 or 8 or 10. I don't remember what it was. It was longer pre-order. And then of course the mid-length, the 3 month pre-orders, and my favorites are 2 to 3 weeks. I don't mind, honestly, I don't mind the 3 month schedule. But I've found that for me, I don't have the ability to the attention span or the time, when with my home life to devote to longer pre-orders. And they cause a little bit of stress for me because, that whole, I just feel like I need to constantly have pre-orders, them coming in, and long dead runs make me nervous. And so it's just that pressure to make sure the rankings and everything. And I know everything's Amazon's fault. um, but that's for first and series books. For later books and series, it doesn't really bother me if it'll go for a while without pre-orders. And as I've said before, I can always make money off of a book after it's been released, but it's a lot harder to make money for me on a book that is um, not currently available. And actually, that's something that the other two have talked about. Pre-orders, it's harder to get people to commit to buying a pre-order because it's not there. That knee-jerk purchase is not there. But I do love the idea of catching readers while they're excited. And so I almost always have something set up for the next book by the time the previous book gets published. By that point, that book is, so the previous book is already done. And I've already started writing the next book. And so I have a good idea of whether I can get it finished in the next 6 months or not. So that's what I usually do. And I'm not going to be doing that a whole lot anymore. Moving forward, I think I'll take a break from pre-orders just until things even out a little bit more for us. But I do love the idea of having that link at the back of a previous book to catch excited readers. It's a great way to handle like promoting and things like that. That if they're interested, they'll pre-order. If they're not interested, possibly they will join your newsletter list. And then you can tell them about it later. Anyway, so like I said, moving forward, I'm going to take a break from pre-orders. And as in response to something Lindsay was talking about earlier, I've had to push back the pre-order for Sable Heart twice, and I'm probably going to have to do it one more time. I just can't believe how much our life has been completely upended the last several months. I mean, our second baby had tons of health problems, lots and lots of health problems. In the first 6 months of his year or of his life were really, really difficult, but every baby's different. Right. So, I was just checking while Lindsay was talking about that. I'm like, I've got 17 days to get this book finished, and I just barely started revising. I don't think I'm going to get it finished on time, including my editing. So I'll be emailing Amazon, and I'll let you guys know how that goes. I'll be like, hey, can you guys please remove that? And then Joe, go ahead and say what you put in chat.
Smashwords does indeed require a date at least 10 days in the future for pre-orders, and it makes sense because Smashwords is a distributor, so they have to review and then distribute. So you can't just put it up, the day before, or else it won't get to the other stores.
Okay, that makes sense. And we are going to go ahead and move into questions now, listener questions. And if you have a question for us that you'd like us to answer on the show, come join our Facebook group. And we have a questions thread, and then occasionally we do themed questions. And this was a themed question for pre-orders. Scott asks, is it verified that pre-orders count at half value for rank boost on launch day? Heard that somewhere.
Absolutely not. Next now. So I've heard the same stuff in Facebook groups, and most of the people, I don't want to say 100%, I know everything. Like Amazon doesn't tell us what things count for. So it's all what we can deduce from our own books that we publish. And so that's what I'm basing this no on, is the fact that, first off, all the people I've seen saying it counts towards, gives you a boost, like all those past orders on launch day are in Kindle Unlimited. And I think just from looking at how my own books work, because, a new Kindle Unlimited, a new release after pre-order comes out at like midnight local time for whoever ordered it. So, and it usually takes a few hours for sales ranking to update. So when I pop on Amazon at 6 or 7 a.m. Pacific time, and I see like, okay, I had 4,000 pre-orders from my last book, and the ranking is just starting to trickle upward, because at this point I haven't mailed my list or announced anything on the social medias. So I'm like, no, because even if it was let's say it was counted for a tenth as much, 400 orders would absolutely move you up from like whatever it was, 1,500 in the store, you would get a big bump from 400. You get a huge bump from 4,000. Because when I had 900, like I said, within 24 hours, I shot all the way up to almost 100, like it was 102 or something in the store. So I don't think so. I think what happens is that it just continues, the sales, yay, you got them. You get the money, you can see it on your KDP reports. But and then people start, the people that have big fan bases in KU, as soon as it launches that day, some of them are going to be there at midnight and they follow you and they start borrowing the book. And I think it's the borrows that are kicking in, because these people, let's say I got like 4,000 pre-orders. I know a lot of people sell at least 1-to-1. So they're getting 4,000 borrows, maybe not all on this day one, but you're getting a lot of borrows, and every borrow counts for as much as a sale as far as the sales ranking goes right now. So, and I think that you need to see, for me to believe this is true, I would have to see authors not in KU releasing a book where that's not a factor at all, and kind of see like, and you also have to have thousands of pre-orders really to kind of know, because it just like 100, that's enough to move your sales ranking up, but it's not quite as obvious, and especially if you're only getting partial credit. So my belief is no. I'm always open to like see people's data. I love the data crunchers out there. That's what I think right now, is that it does not give a release day, and that's why we're so much talking about like diluting your launch juice by getting a bunch of pre-orders. And you have to decide on what your goals are. Does that matter? Do you just want the money in the bank? If it's book 8 in a series where people have to have read the first 7 books, does it even matter once you launch at in the store? If it's book 8 in a standalone series, maybe that's a different thing. Like if you're doing romance and each one is a possible entry point in your series, you might have a lot more luck. You might really care a lot more about your sales ranking and tickling the algorithms. They like to be tickled. So I think that is my thoughts on that one. And like I said, I'm always open to the data, and Amazon's always changing. So it's very possible you may listen to this at some future date and they've changed things. But at this time, I don't believe that you get any kind of boost for those past sales. I think you get the boost as the sales come in.
I agree. I believe Andrea has nothing to add, because that's what it says in the notes. So I'll go into the next question here. Next question is from Timo. What kind of pre-order limited bonuses have you got good experience employing? And I'll say that I personally haven't done that much in the way of pre-order bonuses, but for some of my books, I have done limited exclusivity with Apple. Like I've had as I said, for wide releases, I tend to have a longer pre-order. And when I had like a multi-month pre-order, I gave Apple the book 2 weeks early, and I ended up, if you go to the iBook store, or I guess just Apple Books now, there's like a carousel at the top, and there's all different genres, and each genre has its own carousel. And they gave me a whole carousel thing for 2 weeks, which was very nice. And that was made possible because of the lengthy pre-order, and it was, I didn't do asset lists. I had a complete book during the entire pre-order, so I was able to do that. It's worked out pretty well, but that's really the only thing that I've done with pre-order bonus type stuff.
And these kinds of questions make me excited. I've not been shy about using download bonuses and things like that. I almost always do a bonus of some sort, just because I don't know, I don't know. I think most authors will agree with this. We like spoiling our readers, because when you treat your readers well, they want to come back, and they want to help, and they want to help you. And so I like giving them things. And so I brainstorm, and I talk to my readers, and I ask them, what kinds of things that they would like me to do for them. And even if only like a small percentage asks for it, like a word search thing or something like that, I try to supply that, because it's not that much extra work on my part. There's like word search generators and things like that. But I've made it so that pre-orders are available as soon as someone pre-orders, and as soon as they send in their proof of confirmation, or their whatever proof of purchase. And I've also made it so that they're only available once the book goes live, and throughout that first week. I like doing it where they are available as soon as somebody pre-orders, because it helps them get a bit of an endorphin rush. So they're like, I bought something, I get something right away for it. So they don't have to wait. That's one of the things about pre-orders, is it takes away the I don't know, when people, that happiness that comes when you spend money and you get something cool and you get it for a little while. Pre-ordering doesn't give you that, but giving them a bonus does. And so they get to spend money, and they actually get something from it right away. And so that's helped a lot. I do go more in depth into my courses on that. When it comes to the actual types of bonuses and things like that, anything new written by me has been the best. And other little things, I just brainstorm things. I ask my fans for ideas, things like that. And just whatever I think they would like, and whatever would get me to download. Everybody's different, and then again, make sure those are digital. And okay, so Tyler asks, is it a good idea to do a pre-order for your first book? And I'm guessing he's asking your very first book, not just a first in series. Oh, and I agree with Lindsay and Joe's answers below, by the way.
All right. Well, my thought on this is that I have seen people actually get momentum and get sales in the store as a new author with the first book. Like, I think I'm actually we had Jasmine Walt on the show, and I feel like this was something she did. This was probably a few years ago now when she was first getting started, but she had an amazing cover. It just looked awesome. I think she had it at 99 cents, and she really got the momentum rolling with a pre-order. That's pretty tough, especially if you don't have like any newsletter swaps or anything lined up. If you're not real dialed in and into the networking and connected with the community to really get things rolling, because as we've talked about, advertising may not be as effective on a pre-order. So I would probably just do like a short one, like I said, so that you get it coming out on the day you want. And if it can be hard to even get promotions on new release unless you have, like, a lot of the sites require that you have other books out with good reviews, because most of them will say like you have to have a 4-point review average or something at least before they'll accept you. And they don't know that on a new release if you're a new author, so they're probably going to say no. An exception might be if you're doing something every week that has allowed you to build a fan base already. Like, let's say you're doing chapters on a blog, or you're on Patreon, or maybe you're on Wattpad and you've already got people, and you want to, like, every time you put in a new chapter, you want to try to get the order right there while they're excited about the story and thinking about it. And then you might want the pre-order then, and so you can link to it at the end of each new installment that you're putting up. So that might be an exception. I don't see many people that successfully do that, but it has happened. I've seen success stories where people build an audience ahead of time by posting on Wattpad, Patreon, or their blog, or all. All right, that's all I have on that.
And I broadly agree, especially if you're doing Amazon exclusive. The pre-order on the first book is of limited value. You might get, as Lindsay mentioned earlier, you might get some use out of the pre-order in terms of being able to practice and test out promotional stuff. But probably the release spike on Amazon that you would get by not diluting your launch over a longer period of time is more valuable than what you would gain from that, besides informationally. If it's your very first book, I guess you don't have any experience in that, so you get some practice and that might be good for you. But unless you do really well doing it, you're either going to spend a lot of money and not learn a lot, or just generally speaking, I think a shorter pre-order for your first book is smart. The next question is from Andrea Neal. If you're releasing a book in a series, how would you coordinate sales/promos for other books in the series? What if it's a new series or standalone? And it just so happens this is basically what this entire year is for me. This is the year of 6, because I'm doing new releases in 3 old series, and I'm doing book 6 in each one. So what I've tried to do is with the first book 6 release, which was the Coin of Kenvard and the Book of Deacon series, I had a 2-week period where I did a staggered discount on my entire series, except for the pre-order. Book 1 was already free, and the rest of the books went up by $1 per book until you got to the new one, which was full price at $4.99. I did advertising for the full series or just for the first book. I did both. I did carousel ads for the full series, and those carousel ads included the pre-order as the final entry on the list. So it's one of the only times that I threw an actual paid pre-order in. And then I also directed people back to the first book, and it was reasonably successful. The actual pre-order count for this most recent release was way down compared to prior books. But again, in prior years, I did much longer pre-orders for these, so there would be more time for the sales to accumulate. And also, the overall sales increase in the series sort of made up for what I might have lost in the larger pre-order number. And with smaller pre-orders, it means more of the people who wanted to buy the book bought it during the launch week. So it worked out pretty well. Overall, my income from that series bumped up by about 50%, and the bump has lingered. I think as we're recording this, I think I'm still doing about 20% better on that whole series than I was prior to the new book release. So it worked out pretty well. I believe it or not, again, we're talking about book 6 in 3 different series that I've released basically 1 book a year in. I've only got 1 series it released since pre-orders were an option. Back all the other books in this series sort of didn't have pre-orders even available to me. So I don't have a lot of expertise when it comes to doing standalone pre-orders. The ones that I've done most recently have been short, but that's just been a general policy, not just for standalones and firsts. And one of my new series recently, I didn't start playing with the urban fantasy series I did is the only one I've released when I had sort of pre-order from the inception of the series. And I didn't start messing with longer pre-orders and pre-order promotion stuff until the first book was already out. So I sort of, as said earlier, early books in the series, I try not to mess too much with pre-orders.
Okay, so for series books, there are a few ways you can take this. You can drop all books by $1 the week of the release. You could stagger promotions. So the first book discounted the first week, the second one discounted the second week, etc. You could stagger by a few days. So the first one, discounted for a few days, and then a few days later, the next one, and then so on and so forth. You can discount the second one. So like have the first one be free, the second one 99 cents if it's regular, like $3.99 or $4.99, or you could discount just the first one and the one getting released. I recommend, if you want to have a really big event, really big promotion, discounting the first one and then possibly releasing the later one at full price, or discounting the later one and then leaving the ones in the middle at full price. Depending on what you're aiming for, what your goal is, don't release the new one at full price if it's a later book in the series, or don't release it, at free if it's later in the series. Mainly because your devoted readers will buy it regardless, and it won't bother them to buy it, because it's awesome. It'd be a cool bonus. You could do it for free and they would really appreciate that, but they're expecting to pay anyway, and they want to. Readers, like, they want their authors to be taken care of. They really do. And it's very rare to come across a reader who's just like super judgmental about authors charging for books. Most readers understand that authors need to make money too, and they want to help you. My rule is no discounts on books that are less than 6 months old and usually not a year old. And so what I'll usually do is I'll have the first book be 99 cents. That's technically a discount until either the third book in the series or the last one comes out. And usually I'll do the third one and the last one. Actually it depends. Sometimes I just do the last one. And then I'll do a very, very big promotion as a celebration. And, and that big promotion will be usually the first big promotion I do on the first book in the series. And so it usually generally leads to very nice royalties for quite a while. And my sell through on that usually is a lot higher than if I promoted the first or second book, or maybe even the third book. Usually I do those big events on the last book in the series. And then, and I usually will use like Facebook ads, Amazon ads, promotional websites, like the ones that have been mentioned, and Reading Deals and Bookhaven, things like that.
All right, for myself, if it's a standalone book, I pretty much treat it like a new book one. I'm going to do all the things we've been talking about here with the pre-order, try to line up some ads, of course, promote to my list and my social media sites. I won't spend as much money. I will do probably very little advertising. The last standalone book I put out was about a year and a half ago. Fractured Stars was kind of in my Fallen Empire world, but all new characters, so it wasn't really like it was going to lead people into the rest of the series. And I think I put that one out at $3.99 because I knew I wasn't going to discount it for a while. When I do a book one in like what's going to become a 6 or an 8 book series, I tend to launch at 99 cents because I know I'm going to run promos on that down the road. And like I said, I don't like to make my most loyal fans who buy something on day one pay a higher price knowing I'm going to discount that, like probably since I rapid release and I publish pretty quickly, by the time I'm maybe on book 5, I'm thinking might drop it to 99 cents. Like I'll put it up to $2.99 or something. I think my Sinister Magic's $2.99 right now, so that I can run sales on it later at 99 cents. And I might even do free on that book one eventually, like as I release the last book in the series. But like Andrew was saying, I don't like to do that early on. I prefer to do that stuff later on. I think people are more forgiving of sales and discounts once it's become kind of a backlist title, is more than a year old. So usually just promote that first book whenever I release a new book. But I am going to be releasing the 8th book and final book in my sci-fi series. And because I started another series at the same time, the releases have been slower for these last 3 books. So it's been over a year now since I did that series. So I feel like I can drop the prices a little bit more and nobody's going to bat an eye necessarily. So with that one, I had to put together a $9.99 books 1 through 3 box set earlier than I would have because I was trying to match it to the audiobook that the publisher put out. And so that box set's always been $9.99, but I'm going to go ahead and try. It's in Amazon exclusive right now, but I'm going to try to get a BookBub on that probably in September when I release the 8th and final book in the series. And if I can, I'll drop it to 99 cents for a few days. So I don't usually discount the middle books in the series. They're always just $4.99, assuming they're full-length novels. But I would consider if I was if I stayed in Kindle Unlimited and Amazon exclusive and I had access to the countdown deals, and if the series was like say 2 or 3 years old and I'd moved on to something else and it was all completed, I would definitely consider doing some of the mid-list discounts to lure in newer readers, also combining that with like trying to link to the series page on Amazon instead of just like here's book 1, like hey, you can binge read this whole complete series right now. I think that was not actually the question she was asking about putting out a new book in the series, but it depends on your release schedule. If you're like Joe and you're working on the same series for I don't know, Joe, when did you do like Free Ranch 5-6 years ago, and you just did a new book with Deacon, so you're not worrying about like people being mad about discounts on earlier books because they bought it like 5 years ago and are probably not paying attention. So those are my rambling thoughts. We can go on to the next question.
That question is by Sabrina. She says, how do you advertise pre-orders effectively?
Which I am apparently answering first. So we've kind of talked about this. I would not spend a whole lot of money advertising a pre-order to a stranger. Maybe boosting posts on your Facebook page to your own people, your own fans. An exception, maybe we talked about if you're trying to hit a list and you're willing to lose money to do so, because that is usually how it works. Because you're usually doing, as an indie author, you're probably doing 99 cents, and it's going to cost a lot to get those thousands of sales, especially on a book one. Even if you're an established author, a book one in a new series, you got to sell your fans on the series first. So you might want to try to like do a prequel novella or something else, or some short story on your blog that you can have at the same time to get your new readers to sell them on the new series. But I would be a little leery about spending a lot of money, other than just like I mentioned, tinkering. Seeing which ad copy is most effective, so that when day one comes, the release comes, you already got it nailed in. You already know which ad copy is converting best, which keywords are converting best, if you're getting all into that stuff for Amazon ads or Facebook ads. Yeah, that's my thoughts. I'd be very careful about spending a lot, because I just don't feel that they convert well, and my own numbers back that up.
Yep, I agree. I don't think I've done any advertising to a pre-order directly, very much advertising to a pre-order directly. My ads are always going back to the beginning of the series. However, the exception is the aforementioned BookBub pre-order email. And since we're at the hour and I'm probably not going to answer too many more questions, I'll just quickly go over what that is, since I sort of billboarded it earlier. If you have at least 1,000 followers on BookBub, and people can follow you on BookBub. If you don't know that, then let people know, because it helps. You can do a pre-order announcement email, and it goes out to all of your followers, and you don't have to qualify for it beyond having those 1,000 people. You pay for it depending on how many people it goes out to, and it's just an extra email in their email box, in addition to the featured daily email that they get. And obviously this has more impact if you have more followers, and it costs more if you have more followers. But that is a thing that is only available for pre-orders, and it is something that I've done 6 times, I think. I've not had a huge amount of success from it, but it's not nothing. And especially since there's so few effective ways to promote a pre-order, that's one way to do it.
Andrea,
Sorry.
I think you have some thoughts on this too, but I was just going to say, when I've done it, I haven't noticed any more than because you get a free one if you just if you add your book to BookBub before the release, you get a free one during launch week that goes out to all your BookBub followers. As of right now, maybe they'll change that right now, eventually, and start charging you for that. So, but if you were trying to make a list, that might be a time to do the BookBub pre-order. I paid for it, I think, with Sinister Magic, because why the heck not? I was throwing all kinds of money at my new urban fantasy series, so I could not make any more money than on any of my previous other series. Lesson slightly learned, but hey, the readers are enjoying it. Oh, go ahead, Andrea.
I was gonna say, I started reading it. I like it, so I haven't gotten as far as I'd like to, because I'm not in a reading phase right now. But
You were like sleeping and drooling on your couch the last 2 days, so that will make it less interesting, possibly.
yeah. Yeah, so I haven't ever done a BookBub pre-order alert thingy, mainly because my clients, when they've done it, they haven't seen a huge benefit from it. So in answer to the question, what I'll usually do is frequently run a low-grade Facebook ad to the pre-order book one in a series. It's mainly to get my also bots in line and to work out kinks in the system. So like description, I do tests, to see which description works the best, see which book cover works the best, see which tagline works the best, things like that. And that just helps me have things ready to go once the book gets launched. But as we've said, the main reason to advertise a pre-order is really honestly is usually to try to hit a list, and you need to spend a lot of money to do that. And I mean, even depending on the size of your readership, even if you have, I've got a couple author friends who in the romance genre, when they release a book and they do a pre-order, the size of their audience gets them on the list almost every single time. But the majority of authors, that's not the case. And you have to ask yourself, where is your money better spent? And I would suggest is probably not putting it towards a pre-order.
All right. Our next question is from Richard K. Fox. What approaches outside of the normal, which would be email list, increased ad spend on Amazon or Facebook, have worked for you? And Lindsay, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think I talked about this a little bit before, but I've definitely will put up like teaser stuff. I did this with the new series. I wrote a novelette. It ended up being about 10,000 words, so that is the official term. Although as I was writing it, I realized like the characters were at a point in their developing relationship. They start as enemies, and then of course romance occurs later on. I realized I was kind of too far along the line with that. It was really something that took place after like book 4. So this particular time, I didn't put my bonus story up early. I had just recently put it up as I released book 4. But I did do an interview early on with one of the characters. And so if you can do some tie-in stuff that would kind of get, I think it's going to be hard to get strangers to buy in. You can give it a shot. If you've got a complete short story that you're putting on your blog or you're putting out somewhere, that may work. But your fans that you want to sell the new series to are probably the ones that are going to be most likely to go, oh yeah. Because I don't know about you guys, but my fans want like more in the old series, even though when I've said like this series is complete, I have not written any new installments in 4 years. They're like, oh, can't we have more books with that character? Which is cool. I love that they care that much and they want more stories. But I always feel like I gotta sell them a little bit. I get them excited about the new series. Usually once they start reading, they're on board. But that's always my thought, and I may be a little, I don't know. I'm not sure paranoid is the word. I just unconfident that people will just automatically go over, even though many of them often do. But so yeah, the teasers, short stories, interviews with characters are something that don't take long to write, and the fans seem to enjoy that stuff.
Yeah, I agree pretty much across the board. I've been working on getting a backlog of short stuff, and character interviews are great. Character interviews are great for a couple of reasons. First off, because they're interesting and fun and short, but also because you can ask for questions, and if you're trying to build, interactions with your readership, if you want to have more activity on your Twitter or on your Facebook, this is particularly good for Facebook. Then this is a thing where you do a post that requires people to comment on it, and it starts conversations. So definitely character interviews or anything like that is a really fun and useful thing to do. Other stuff that I've done, if you can find if you are looking to promote something later in a series and you can find a multi-author collection of book 1s, those have been moderately helpful. I've worked with Story Bundle a lot in the past, and previously I've wanted to release books with Story Bundle because again I'm wide, so I like the idea of doing it. Like I felt as though it helped the bundle for something to be released in the bundle, and it's certainly true, but it doesn't help me as much. It helps the bundle more, and I of course make more money if the bundle gets sold. But I've found that if you can find a way to include something later in the series in a bundle, it sort of gets the word out about the later in the series thing, or really just using a bundle to promote other stuff that's outside the bundle. It's not tremendously impactful, but it's one of those rare promotional things that actually makes you money as opposed to costs you money. So if you can get together and do a bundle, only works if you're wide, by the way. And also, I should say, when you're doing like the multi-author collection or being in a bundle of any kind, that's also networking. And often, even if it costs money or if it doesn't make much money, the networking with other authors and building your network is easily worth the effort that gets put into it.
And for me, I want to talk a little bit about, just mention what my experience is with character interviews, but just my answer to the question is download bonuses again. And then also I like to do steady flow promotions for books outside of Kindle Unlimited and big promotions once a quarter for books in Kindle Unlimited. It's not necessarily out of the box, but honestly, it still works. So you test which websites work the best for your books and then use those and use them regularly, once a quarter or one a month if you're outside of Kindle Unlimited. Just keep using what works best for you and test things out until you find out what works best for you. And then about character interviews, the ones that I've had be the most successful have been when I've picked a quirky character from my series and had that person conduct the interview with the character, the main character. And it showcases your writing. I mean, it kind of brings humor to the situation and just puts your main character in an awkward position, which also leads to fun interviews. So, see if you can have the quirky character embarrass your character and just to see what happens. My readers have enjoyed that. I haven't done a character interview in a while, but those are the ones that are my favorites to write, when things get awkward. If you can't tell, I don't mind awkward situations.
I always do them like I'm the journalist or I'm the author asking the questions to usually a non-POV character. And they're always like salty with me because like I'm killing them all the time. You know, I'm like giving them a hard time. And so I don't know. They do end up being pretty quirky too because
They're
as you
like,
can
we
imagine,
we just hate you, Lindsay.
they
Lindsay, we
are.
just
They're
hate you.
like, why do you do these things to me? You know? So I don't
That's
know. My
amazing.
characters give me a hard time. I did want to ask, because I know you answered this like a year ago, and I think the interview we did with you to start off the show, but when you're doing a pre-order and you're doing these download bonuses, for people who don't know, how are you like having, is it all automated that they type in like, here's the proof that I bought the book, or do they email you? How does that process work?
So what I usually do is I use Zapier, Zapier.com. I really need to put a tutorial together on that because it's not intuitive. Intuit. There's a word there.
You were right the first time, and then you questioned yourself.
Good. So what I usually do is I'll create a dummy Gmail account. So like shadow profit bonuses at gmail.com. And then I'll go into Zapier and I'll set it up so that when they send their proof of purchase, so a confirmation email or a screenshot to that email address, shadowprofitbonuses at gmail.com, and don't use that, people, it's probably still turned on, then Zapier will automatically send them a response through that account that I set up that has a link for them to download their download bonuses.
Awesome. That doesn't sound too complicated.
No, it's pretty
Automated is
easy.
good.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's so, I love it. It just is, especially if you get like, I had like 5,000 confirmations sent in once, and I was like, I just sit back and watch them come in and didn't have to do anything.
Excellent. Well, I think that Andrea and I need to have dinner, and Joe probably needs to go to bed because we're recording late for us. And we have a lot more questions on pre-order, so we'll plan on doing kind of a part 2. And if we think of anything else that we forgot to mention or just want to add in, we will do so. And I guess thank you for listening. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Nope.
I'm all emptied out.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and thank you to Joshua Pearson for producing the show. You can find the show notes or leave a comment or question at sixfigureauthors.com with the number 6. Although all these questions came from our Facebook group, which is just search for Six Figure Authors. If you're not there yet, we're up to like almost 900 people. So, and then all those people who think they're going to get in, even though they don't answer the questions, as if they're not fans, they're not listeners to the show. We know. So we'll solicit questions for future topics there. I think this was hopefully pretty helpful to you guys. So thanks again for listening, and see you later, everyone.
Bye.
So long, everybody.